Yo, welcome to Malone's Magic Cards YouTube. Today, we're going to be going over what I think are the top 10 cards from Evolving Skies. Now, when I make this list, it's not for the upcoming meta, it's just what do I think are the 10 cards with the highest amount of potential, with a little bit of thinking of what is currently in format. It's going to be very important as you see the list. We're going to count backwards as any good YouTube top 10 video does. Let's start with number 10. My number 10 is Galarian Articuno. Once during your turn, you play this Pokemon from your hand onto your bench. You may attach up to 2 Psychic Energy cards from your hand to this Pokemon. That's really good. This works well with Shadow Rider. This is one of those times where, we already know Shadow Rider exists. The fact that you can potentially, you have a big hand late game, just bench this with 2 Psychic Energies. Now your Shadow Rider is doing 60 more damage. Super good. The other reason is the attack. The reason I think that this is the best of the birds, I think all 3 birds are very good. The Zapdos, the Moltres, and the Articuno. The reason I think the Articuno is the best is it has a sniping attack. Discard all Psychic Energies, does 120 damage to one of your opponent's bench Pokemon. That is a ton of damage for a single prize Pokemon that can power itself up. Yes, 3 Psychic Energies is a lot to have out of nowhere, but it is 100% possible. And 120 snipe is really, really good. No, it doesn't KO anything like a Crobat, but it helps you to 2-shot VMAXs without needing a boss's orders. So I think Galarian Articuno is just such a good card. Snipe attack, the ability, everything about it is good. My number 9 is Pumpkaboo. Come rotation, we are losing Resetting Whole Marshadow from Unbroken Bonds, but we get Pumpkaboo, which is slightly worse, but still very good. Pumpkin Pit as the ability. When you play this Pokemon from your hand onto your bench during your turn, you may discard a stadium in play. Biggest reason this is good is it is a counter to Path to the Peak. Now, there will be other stadiums. Stadium wars have been a very big deal for the last handful of formats, even before Path to the Peak came out. Pumpkaboo being a quick ball, searchable stadium removal is just very, very nice. This card will 100% see play in the format, whether it's for sure in Shadow Rider to play around Path to the Peak, or if it's in another deck just as your stadium out. Sometimes you're totally fine benching this thing that who cares if they knock it out, it's a Pumpkaboo. You're never going to attack with it, but the ability is just really good. Being able to quick ball for your stadium might be good because Chaotic Swell's gone. If you're playing a deck that has bench space and doesn't really need a stadium, Pumpkaboo might actually be better than playing a stadium because you can always quick ball for it. If you play an ordinary rod, you can rod it back. Well, you can't rod back stadiums. So I like the Pumpkaboo. I think it's a good card. Broken? Of course not. Resetting Whole Marshadow is strictly better for right now, but Pumpkaboo giving us an out to Path of the Peak or any other really good stadiums that they print is just super good. My number 8. Okay, I'm kind of cheating here in that I have both Leafeon V and VMAX, but I think individually these cards are slightly underwhelming, but together they are quite good. So the reason I think Leafeon V/VMAX are here is Leafeon V's ability. Once during your turn, search a deck for grass energy attached to one of your Pokemon, then your turn ends. Super good, especially going first. Get your Leafeon V down, you can have 2 energies on the field after turn 1. I mean, that's just so powerful. That increases your chance to play boss's orders instead of a supporter to KO your opponent's V. It just gives you so many options that you really don't have with other decks. And Leafeon VMAX. Leafeon VMAX is a very good card on its own, but I think that ability pushes it over the edge into being its own deck. Without Leafeon V's ability, I would be less impressed with Leafeon VMAX, but the fact that it can help to set itself up is so good. Leafeon VMAX Grass Knot does 60 damage for each color or each energy in your opponent's active Pokemon's retreat cost. You're going to 2-shot most things. Sure, someone in the comments might come up with some convoluted way where you can OHKO Pokemon with it. Realistically, you're going to 2-shot for 2 energies, similar to Eternatus VMAX, but with a little less setup necessary. So I like this card. You can also pair it with other grass Pokemon if you need to. You can play it with Rillaboom and Dhelmise. I'm personally thinking of playing it with the new Trevenant as well, because the Trevenant could be a good finisher. But I like this card. Leafeon V sets Pokemon up. Leafeon VMAX hits really hard, and then there's just so many cool grass Pokemon. You have Dhelmise, you have Rillaboom, you have Zarude. Zarude can power stuff up as well as heal stuff. So there's just so much that grass has going on. I think grass will be pretty good, and I think Leafeon V/VMAX are going to be the catalyst to grass being a good deck. Number 7 is Medicham V. This one comes back into the Pokemon that already exist, play a big role in deciding this. If I didn't know Urshifu VMAX was a good deck, or probably going to be the best deck post rotation, this card would be so unimpressive. In fact, when it was revealed, it was before Urshifu was quite as dominant as it currently is and is looking to be. So I was like, this card's not that good. But after seeing Urshifu, after seeing the Inteleon with quick shooting as well, I think Medicham V is such a good card. For 2 colorless energies, which is going to be a Rapid Strike energy most of the time, put 2 damage counters on one of your opponent's Pokemon. Damage counter, so it does get around any bench barrier that might exist anywhere near in the future, or Mew currently. If your opponent's Pokemon is knocked out by this attack, take another turn after this one. You can't use 2 Yoga Loops in a row, but this is so nice. You can use quick shooting and kind of place some damage counters into a Yoga Loop turn, into another really solid turn, and you can kind of make these sweet multi-prize turns take off. You can always use against an Inteleon, an opponent's Inteleon, you can Gmax Rapid Flow for 120 into a quick shooting. That brings up to 140 into a Yoga Loop. You KO their quick shooting and you take an extra turn. I think this card is so good. It's going to have some really good combos, specifically in most likely Rapid Strike Urshifu, but there could be like a Zero or a Blaziken type deck, or you could also see this in like a Flaffy deck as well, because it is a Rapid Strike Pokemon, and Rayquaza's Rapid Strike, Zero Aura's Rapid Strike. There's other spread stuff in Lightning, and it's a 2 colorless attack. So I really like Medicham V. Again, like Leafeon, I don't think it's broken, but it's very playable, and it's going to be super interesting. A good one of tech card in a variety of decks. Number 6 is Stormy Mountain. Once during each player's turn, that player may search their deck for a Lightning or Dragon Pokemon put on their bench. Then the player shuffles their deck. This is reminiscent of Brooklet Hill for those of you who played back in the day. Brooklet Hill was for any water or fighting Pokemon. Every single water and fighting deck played Brooklet Hill. It was really good. Stormy Mountains, same thing. Just you have an extra quick ball per turn for your setup Pokemon. This makes the Flaffy engine better. This makes potential dragon decks, actually good. We all talked about how Fog Crystal came out and it was like, oh, Psychic decks just got better, which meant Shadow Riders is really good because it can set up faster than everything else. Stormy Mountains lets you set up really fast as well, especially if you can play basic attackers in your Flaffy deck or in your dragon deck. You can just go grab them every single turn. It makes it really easy. So I really like Stormy Mountains. 100% chance this card is played if Lightning and Dragon decks are good. My number 5 is Zinnia's Resolve. Now this one, I 100% guarantee some of you watching this are like, the heck? I assume other content creators don't have this in their top 10. I am absolutely in love with this card. Play this card only if you discard 2 other cards from your hand. Draw a card for each of your opponent's Pokemon in play. Big benches are going to be a thing. Inteleon engines are going to stay, which I like. I am a big fan of the Inteleon engine, but that means benches are going to be 4-ish Pokemon, 5-ish Pokemon potentially. Shadow Rider's always going to have a big bench. This card essentially says discard 2, draw 4, 5, 6 cards. That's incredibly powerful. Yes, I understand Marnie disrupts your opponent's hand. Yes, I understand some of us watching this are like, my opponent bricking off of Marnie is my win condition. Sure, that is a way to play the game. But Zinnia's letting you get a very large hand is nice. You can combo this with the new Milotic, which did not make the list, where your hand cannot be disrupted. And you can just build these really big hands for these really cool combos. I'm a fan of Zinnia's Resolve. Talking on the Lake of Rage podcast with Robin Scholes, where he just talked about drawing cards being good, having a large hand size being good. And Zinnia's is one of those cards that it draws more than 3 usually. Any card that draws more than 3 is generally pretty solid. You think of all the cards that just straight draw 3 from the top. That's pretty much all of them. That's where they limit it. Like you can Dan for 4, you can Coach Trainer sometimes for 4, you can Doctor sometimes for 4. But Zinnia's is pretty consistently going to let you draw. You may say, well, the discard mellow, that doesn't sound great. We don't have many ways to discard right now. Being able to discard cards that are dead lets you play around a late game Marnie where you might have those extra dead cards thrown back into your deck you don't want to draw. Discarding is usually a positive thing. I'm a fan of Zinnia's. I think it's a super good card. It might turn out to be worse than Marnie, but I don't want it to be worse than. My number 4 is Flaffy. I talked about Flaffy a little bit earlier with Stormy Mountains. It's just a really good ability. Gmax Rapid Flow unfortunately does pick off our poor little sheeps, and there's no real way around that right now. So I don't think Flaffy's going to be a ridiculously good card once we hit post rotation and Mew is gone, unless you're fine losing to Gmax Rapid Flow and Rapid Strike Urshifu. But you cannot deny the power of the card. These abilities have always been good. Malamar Psychic Recharge was a good deck. Electric with Dynamotor, literally the exact same card, was good. Metal Links for Bronzong was good. Flaffy will be good. Great? I don't know. But the fact is, the ability is too good to ignore. This is a very good card. You can build decks around it. If we ever get Bench Barrier back, or Rapid Strike Urshifu and other bench snipers stop being so meta, Flaffy will make a very strong appearance in the meta. My number 3 is Glaceon VMAX. It has Zamazenta's ability, but as a VMAX. Prevent all damage done to this Pokemon by attacks from your opponent's Pokemon VMAX, except any Glaceon VMAX. So the mirror match isn't this incredibly disgusting thing. It does combo well with a card not on the list, which is the badge that removes its weakness and its retreat cost. So if your opponent does play Path of the Peak and hit you, you can go ahead and attach the tool, retreat for free, and hit with a new one, force them to boss it up, plus play another Path of the Peak. So I'm a fan of Glaceon. I think it is a very cool wall deck. Definitely meta dependent. You don't hit particularly hard. You are weak to Zacian, though you have an item that can remove your weakness. If they play, honestly, probably just one Tool Scrapper, that matchup becomes almost unwinnable. But Glaceon VMAX, wall abilities have always been good. There was Hoopa from Shining Legends. That was its own deck for a little while. You had Keldeo GX, which was also another card that was briefly its own deck and then paired with ADP for a while and was quite difficult for some decks to get around. You have the Safeguard Suicune way back in the EX era. That was, again, another card that got thrown into decks as just like, hey, you can't deal with this. Glaceon, I think, will be able to be its own deck. It's got Melanie, which is really good. It's got a spread attack, which is nice because 150 plus 150 is not a two-shot, but you hit that 30 damage and you can make some cool plays happen with your Glaceon. Number 2 is Raihan. Like Zinnia's Resolve, I'm probably higher on this card than the majority of people who are watching this or other content creators, but I am absolutely in love with this card. I think non-VMAX decks are going to love it. VMAX decks will probably even play a one of if you play the Inteleon engine. The fact you can Drizzile for it is so good. Play this card only if any of your Pokemon were knocked out during your opponent's last turn. Attach a basic energy card from your discard pile to one of your Pokemon. If you do, search your deck for a card and put it in your hand, then shuffle your deck. So for example, if you use Sobble's Keep Calling on turn 1 with Rapid Strike Urshifu, you go second, they knock out the Sobble after you use Keep Calling. Sweet. Raihan, attach the Rapid Strike energy. You got the fighting that was on the Sobble. Pop it on with the Raihan. You can Gmax Rapid Flow on turn 2. And the same thing for pretty much every other deck. I think everything with the Inteleon engine will tech in one of these. Most decks with the Inteleon engine will tech in one of these. And single prize decks can really take advantage of this, as much as single prize decks may or may not exist. This type of card that I think is just so cool. It makes, the double attachments, energy acceleration for everything. Search your deck for any card is so powerful. Yeah, sometimes, you're like, I can just draw some cards. Drawing cards is cool, but guaranteeing the piece you need is so good. So often you're like, I really only need one thing. Go grab that one thing. I think Raihan is such a good card. It is not for every deck, of course, but a lot of decks, I think, will be able to make use of a one of Raihan, and it will be able to swing games very heavily in the favor of those decks. And my number 1, I don't think anyone is surprised by this. Umbreon VMAX. Dark Signal, when you play this Pokemon from your hand to evolve one of your Pokemon during your turn, you may switch one of your opponent's bench Pokemon with their active Pokemon. Max Darkness does 160. That's essentially enough to two-shot everything because you can use single strike energy on this. Umbreon VMAX is going to be a support Pokemon in a variety of decks. Eternus is going to play it. We could see something like a Victini play it. We could see any deck can play the Umbreon VMAX. And I think it's going to be its own deck as well. You can use Houndooms to accelerate with it. Piers suddenly becomes a very strong supporter because you can find your Houndooms with Piers. You can find your Umbreons. And that makes Piers a better boss's orders for these decks as well, because it helps you set up where boss doesn't. And late game, it's essentially a boss because you have Dark Signal, and you can go grab your single strike energy as well. So you're able to two-shot everything in the meta. You can gust anything up so your opponent can't hide on the bench. I think Umbreon VMAX is going to be its own deck. It's also weak to grass, which isn't going to be particularly popular. I know I talked about Leafeon earlier. I think Leafeon's like a tier 2 deck at best. And I live too much of my life in tier 2, unfortunately, which is why I'm a fan of Leafeon. But Umbreon has a good weakness, a good attack. Single strike is a very strong designation to have, and the ability is one of the best abilities in the game. No surprise there. A little bit of an unconventional list, I assume, but let me know what you think. Let me know your top 10. I know I missed something that you didn't have because I assume, like I said, most people don't have Zinnias on their list, but I think Zinnias is such a good card. Raihan being number 2, I assume is another controversial point. So let me know what you agree, what you disagree with in the comment section below. Like, comment, subscribe, all the other YouTube stuff, and I will catch you all in the next video. Peace out.